Hey everyone! Tonight we're not just sitting down to a medieval feast. We're entering a world where every goblet hides a motive, every chair is a chess piece, and every bite is a political move wrapped in sauce. Imagine towering stone halls ablaze with candlelight, tapestries swaying gently over tables, where nobles are trying not to accidentally start a war over the arrangement of salt. You're invited. Lucky you. But be warned. You probably won't survive this dinner without offending someone important, getting a little tipsy, or discovering that swans don't actually taste good. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And hey, leave a comment telling me your local time and where you're watching from. I want to know who's asleep in Prague and who's wide awake in Toronto. Now, turn down the lights, crank up the fan to some soothing music, and let's embark on this evening's journey together. You didn't just stumble into a medieval banquet, you've been summoned. And that summons means something. You're not here for the food. You're here because a powerful person wants to test you. Thank you, threaten you, or maybe all three. Even minor nobles aren't allowed to sit unless they've done something noteworthy recently. A strategic land donation, a secret marriage, or maybe a cleverly arranged bribe. If the invitation doesn't come with an explanation, be worried. That usually means you're the one invited. Once you accept, the countdown begins. Preparations begin immediately, not out of excitement but out of survival instinct. A tailor is summoned, hair is trimmed, and shoes are scrubbed until they remember how to shine them. Footmen are sent ahead to save you a seat in the hall. Because here's the thing. Seating isn't just a formality. It's a ranking system disguised as dinner. Closer to the host means you matter. You matter. You're safe for now. Further away, your power fades like a smoldering candle at the back of the room. Too far away, and you're a cup spilled from the glass, farther away from yesterday's gossip. But politics doesn't stop at the table. Even your appearance is part of the show. Some guests make grand entrances. They arrive with a retinue of attendants' trumpets blaring, velvet cloaks billowing, servants marching behind them bearing gifts, silks, or even live birds to impress. Not subtle, that's the point. Others arrive as quietly as a whisper. No fanfare, no announcements, just a hooded cloak, a quiet word to the porter, and a nod to the butler. These are the people you keep a close eye on. Diplomats, rivals, or spies, people who play the long game. The courtyard smells faintly of hay and horse sweat. Flags flap in the wind. You straighten your collar and prepare for the next step, the announcement. The trumpets again, loud as ever. A stable boy drops a bucket. You try not to jump. The door opens, and now it's your name. Lord Edward of Thornhaven, Warden of the Eastern Wards, Protector of the Alders. And then you stop listening. So does everyone else. The goose is probably cold. Inside, the hall is a resplendent monument to opulence. Walls are covered in tapestries. Candles hang in heavy iron chandeliers. Rows of trestle tables flank benches, all facing a high table on a stage-like platform. The air smells of wax, roast meat, and politics. This isn't just dinner. This is a stage. You look around the room. Who's been here? Who's been suspiciously absent? Who dares wear French silk in an English hall? Every smile is calculated. Every bow is measured. You nod in response, taking note. This is no time for mistakes. Sir. A footman approaches and bows low, too low, a bad sign. He points to your seat, and you follow, passing familiar faces as you go. A noble smirks as you pass. Another raises his glass, lips curling in a joke you shouldn't have heard. Your seat is in the middle. Not great, but not humiliating. You're still present. That's fine. Other guests continue to arrive. Some are noisy, others are ghostly. A baron's daughter in a dress 2 seasons out of fashion. A knight without a retainer. A bishop coughs suspiciously. Servants scurry away. Someone's in the wrong seat. A shuffle begins. A butler grimaces. The meal hasn't even begun, but tension is already rising like steam from the plates. You take your seat and glance at the empty glass before you. Silver, clean, waiting. All around you, the room hums with hushed conversation and underhanded sarcasm. One wrong look, one misplaced joke, and you could find yourself relegated to the cold corner of the table next. Or not even invited. Because this isn't just a meal, It's a test, a game with high stakes and dim lighting. The host is watching. Everyone is watching. And you haven't even taken your first bite. You glance down at the wooden chair below. It's been wiped down. A streak of wax still clings to the edge, and someone's initials have been carved into the surface, perhaps a bored aristocrat from a previous generation, waiting for his soup or for political change. You imagine they've sat here before. Because this seat is a message. You're not at the high table, and you're certainly not near the door, where the wind blows in and the servants whisper about who's fallen from grace. You're somewhere in the middle, visible, but not essential, respected, but not feared, the kind of position that suggests potential or precarious neutrality. At a medieval meal, seating was everything. The closer you were to the host, who often perched like a hawk on the highest platform, the more power you held. These were the king's favorites, his closest allies, or those he feared offending. Their plates were the first to be filled. Their cups were never empty. They sat above the salt, a pile of expensive spices placed near the host, and those below decorative, disposable. One wrong word and they would be replaced by someone hungrier and more polished. And that was only the beginning. Long T-shaped tables stretched out like the spokes of a wheel, each position carefully calculated. The knights were at the bottom. Next came the squires, then the merchants, the priests, and the lesser clergy, all the way to the very end, near the kitchen, where the heat was dry, the food was served cold, and the conversation revolved mainly around soup prices and sore knees. Historians still debate whether these arrangements were always formal, or whether some evolved naturally through fear and instinct. But one thing is clear: where you sit can enhance your status or destroy it altogether. Someone tries to change seats quietly. Of course, a noble claims his seat is wrong, that he is always placed closer to the dais. He gestures to a nervous butler. The butler, caught between hierarchy and hospitality, nods too many times. A small ripple ripples across the benches. Someone snickers. Someone clenches their goblet. No one says it, but everyone knows the party is already underway. You look to your left. A woman in blue silk with a falcon brooch. She smiles but has no eyes. You nod politely. To your right, an elderly knight with too many rings and not enough cartilage. He adjusted his belt, grunted, and promptly ignored you. These were your neighbors for the evening. Allies, enemies, passers-by. It didn't matter. As soon as you sat down, you were in the game. A servant passed by, whispering instructions to a man 2 seats away. The guest frowned. Apparently his position had been changed due to his late arrival. He had been moved closer to the salt. His smile was not subtle. Another noble at the back of the room saw this and frowned. He leaned in and whispered something to the man next to him. You couldn't hear it, but the tone was weighty. There was always a ripple effect. A small change could rearrange the entire room like pieces on a very elaborate chessboard. And you tried to look casual, just interested enough to notice, but not enough to be accused of plotting. You sat, running your fingers lightly along the edge of the table. It was covered with a linen cloth, though some of the wood showed old wine stains, grease, and the ghosts of too many dinners. Above you, a chandelier of dripping wax and iron tilts slightly to one side. You wonder if it has always been warped, or if it is now tottering under the weight of some forgotten argument. The herald coughs. Everyone is silent. The host enters, cloak fluttering, beard neatly trimmed, eyes sharp. He does not smile. He does not need to smile. His presence is enough. At the same time, the guests rise, not too quickly, of course. Everything is carefully considered. You join them, bowing slightly and glancing toward the high table. This is the centerpiece of the room, set higher than the others, arranged so that everyone below can see and be seen. The Lord signals for everyone to sit. The chairs creak. And then it begins. Not the food. Not yet. That would be too easy. First, observe. You pretend to adjust your sleeves while checking the position of your opponents. You notice who is sitting too close to someone they shouldn't be. You watch a young nobleman try to laugh off something his neighbor said. A lady rolls her eyes. A merchant clenches his jaw. The host hasn't said a word yet he says a lot by the way he arranges people. It's a map of favor and fear, ambition and punishment, drawn not in ink but on benches. Nearby, a servant whispers to a colleague, They've run out of rice paper thick slices of bread that serve as plates. You see a slice hastily cut from a fresh loaf. Someone will have a crust that's too soft, too soggy. Someone important, perhaps. That someone might complain, or worse, pretend not to notice, which in this world is the sharpest insult. And still, no food, no wine. Because here, the real party is, they are seen, judged, and try not to be forgotten before the first course is served. The first course is served with more ceremony than at most weddings. Not quickly, nothing about a medieval feast is quick, but deliberately, like a procession of edible status symbols. The waiters glide from table to table, carrying trays as if they were carrying precious jewels instead of goose legs. You sit up straight, straighten your sleeves, and try to look like you've seen it all before. Because you have. You've danced this dance before. But still, you peak. The first course, as it's called, is humble. It always is. Bread trays heavy, stale lumps of dough that act as plates are passed down the benches. You take one, careful not to flinch at its texture. A waiter places a piece of soft cheese on top, a spoonful of stewed vegetables on the side, and drizzles something that smells faintly like thyme and vinegar. Not bad, not impressive, but this isn't a show. This is a warm-up. A few guests murmur pleasantries. People compliment the bread, which raises eyebrows. No one ever really compliments bread. It's there to soak up grease, not to win favor. Then, a pause. The waiter leaves, silence. And suddenly, the second clearing begins. The trumpet, no. But the energy changes. The door swings open. Heat rushes in from the kitchen. You hear it before you see it, a low hum, a buzz of conversation, the clatter of plates too big for one person to carry. And then it's here. A whole peacock, turned and reassembled with its feathers still intact, its neck arched gracefully, its eyes staring blankly at everything. Gold leaf had been applied to its wings. You weren't sure whether to eat it or bow. Of course, it was placed on a high table, not for you, not for anyone who needed to ask. Another dish followed, a pie, huge, steaming, covered in pastry. Someone leaned too close. The crust cracked. A live bird flew out. Yes, really. Panic, then laughter. Some nobles ducked their heads. Some applauded. A lady screamed, perhaps sincerely, perhaps to impress. The bird flapped wildly toward the window and disappeared. A butler muttered a curse. The lord raised his wine goblet and smiled faintly. The room fell silent. This was the show. More dishes were brought out. Wild boar on skewers with apples stuffed into mouths, glazed fish stacked like sculptures, custards dyed with saffron, a spice so expensive it was like powdered gold. Swans, yes, swans served on mirrored trays, their necks arched as if they were still alive. Historians still debate whether these swan dishes were actually delicious or just impressive. Most agree that the answer is both, unless the chef added too many cloves. And that's not even the point. There are jelly lions, sugar castles, a tray of a cake garden full of almond blossoms, and what you swear is a tiny fondant bunny nibbling on a candied carrot. You briefly think about stealing it, but then you think again. Because nothing on the table is neutral. Every dish is a message, a rare bird wealth, a delicate spice trade connections, a meat you don't recognize. You're either sophisticated or damned. Meanwhile, you eat with your hands. Technically, forks still exist, but they're foreign and suspicious. The church doesn't quite trust them. They look like tiny pitchforks. And in a room filled with this symbolism, no one wants to look like they're inviting the devil to dinner. So use your fingers, or your own knife, the one you brought with you. You slice, dip, wipe, and nibble neatly. Of course, on purpose, no nibbling. You are not a peasant. Across the table, a merchant is using a wooden spoon, old, probably stolen from his kitchen. He doesn't belong here. Not really. You wonder who he paid. Down the hall, a petty lord drops his spoon. It lands with a loud slap, splattered grease onto his neighbor's sleeve. The neighbor looks down, looks up, says nothing. But you can already hear the chatter rising like steam from a stew. At your table, you take a sip of spiced wine, rich and warm. It lingers. You nod to the servant who poured it. She bows, a little awkwardly. You try the next course, venison in a dark sauce with a hint of acidity beneath the sweetness. You can't tell. Maybe quince? Betrayal. perhaps, but delicious nonetheless. And through it all, you watch, not the food, faces. Who's eating in a hurry? Who's pretending not to be hungry? Who's reaching for the salt that wasn't given? Small detail, a major insult. The salt line is both symbolic and real. Sitting above the line, you're surrounded. Sitting below the line, you remember it with every grain of rice. The butler adjusts his path. He passes one person, deliberately. The ignored guest stiffens. Another notices and smirks. This will be talked about. It always is. The food keeps coming. Pies with fish heads sticking out, boiled eels curled like question marks, a piece of something pale purple that tastes like disappointment and old cloves. Even the mistakes are part of the spectacle. A servant edges closer to the bishop's chair. A goblet tilts. Red wine blooms on the white linen like a rumor spreading. The bishop says nothing. He doesn't need to. The servant turns pale. Somewhere near the end of the table, someone starts coughing. They try to cover their mouth with a napkin, but it doesn't work. A few heads turn. You pretend not to notice, but you notice when everyone notices. A course ends. The plate is cleared. Another course. You've forgotten. There's no real end to the feast, just the laughter fading, belts loosening, restraints fading. And yet dessert hasn't been served. The first toast comes unexpectedly. The host raises his glass, and like a ripple on a still lake, all the guests follow. Chairs rustle, chatter dies, all eyes turn forward. To the king, he announces not too loudly, not too softly, a safe start, as expected. Everyone drinks. And just like that, the rhythm of the party begins to change. You feel it immediately. The air drops, shoulders drop, smiles widen a little. The host speaks again, this time to the person next to him. But the others start whispering, laughing, leaning closer. Wine is poured, glasses are refilled, toasts echo across the tables. A to the weather, A to the host, A to the apple bearer, somehow. You take a slow sip, because you know what's going on. Wine at a medieval banquet is more than a courtesy, it's a catalyst, a truth serum, a trap, a test. The refills are done so quickly that you forget you're saying yes. A good servant will watch how much you drink. A cunning servant will make sure you don't notice how many times your glass has been refilled. You raise your glass again, smile again. This is the rhythm. And not everyone handles it gracefully. To your left, the woman in green silk has turned red. Her laughter has gone on too long. She's gesturing with her fork, rare, but not illegal. Across the table, the merchant's voice is slurred. His face is red, and his words are coming faster than the wine in his glass. To your right, the old knight is a rock, still silent, sipping, a veteran of this war. Another toast, this time to the host's falcons. You raise your glass again. It's still heavy. You haven't had much to drink. Good. Because things are getting tougher. Voices rise. Laughter grows louder. The hall, once filled with orchestral elegance, now resembles a tavern draped in silk. And this is where the trouble is. One more drink and the secret will evaporate like breadcrumbs on a wet table. A young noble admits a military mistake that has yet to be reported back to the court. A visiting ambassador leans too close to another's ear and whispers something in a foreign language. You don't say it, but the tone is clearly deceitful. Historians still debate whether these feasts fostered or destroyed diplomacy. Was peace made by wine or broken by it? The truth is probably both. Because in these moments, when bellies are full and guards are down, the real things happen. A whispered proposal over a glass of wine, a scheme to bring down a rival, a long-forgotten apology, or a threat dressed in jest. You can feel them all flickering around you like candlelight. Another servant appears beside you. You shake your head. Well, that's it for now. He moves on. You notice that the others have lost their discipline too. A guest is trying to toast with an empty glass. Another is trying to toast with bread. A third is singing. The lyrics are problematic. The bishop frowns. Someone slaps someone on the back too hard. A decanter is knocked over. Red wine spills onto the table. A servant rushes in, handkerchief in hand, face twisted in panic. The merchant, yes, the one from earlier, tries to get up but fails. His fall is caught by a passing servant. The room erupts in polite laughter, then real laughter. You don't laugh. Not because you're high up, but because you're watching. Because things are so fragile now. The line between mirth and mockery is a thin one. A few more toasts and a joke about the Earl of Darnley's hairline becomes a challenge. A song about someone's pig farm comes dangerously close to slander, and someone is pouring wine into their soup. The master of ceremonies notices. Of course he notices. He raises his glass again. The room catches the signal. "In memory of those we have lost," he says. Solemn now, eyes downcast, a sigh that ripples through the hall like a wind. It's quiet, really. Everyone drinks. It was a brilliant move, a new beginning. He had brought the room back from the brink with a single word and a sip of wine. But not everyone recovered. A noble was now loudly insisting on sitting closer to the high table. A knight was arm-wrestling with a cleric. Another was sobbing softly into his tray. 2 guests had disappeared. You knew where one went, the other unsure. But the wine kept flowing. You sensed the tension beneath them all. The silent observers. The people who had barely taken a sip. They hadn't come here to party. They had come here to learn, to remember, to wait until the room had forgotten itself. One of them caught your eye. He nodded. You nodded back. Because in the chaos, you had remained calm. You had done the right thing, so far. Another servant approaches, filling a cup that is not yours. You watch him work, gently, quietly. You wonder who trained him. The room becomes louder. Someone starts singing again. This time the melody is better. The others join in. The lyrics are about a fox who outwitted a king. It is clearly a metaphor. Everyone pretends not to notice. But you wait. You eat slowly. You sip carefully. You laugh when necessary. Because the night is not over yet. And you know very well that the worst always comes after dessert. Behind the heavy oak doors at the end of the hall, there is another world. You wouldn't notice it unless you listened. Soft clanks, sudden shouts, heavy footsteps on stone. It sounds like distant thunder, drowned out by the fire and grease. This is the kitchen, not the kind with a fireplace and a stew pot, but a battlefield disguised as a room. While you and the other guests juggle cups and compliments, the real pressure simmers out of sight. Servants run, albeit more slowly. The air is thick with smoke, steam, and fear. Fires burn in open fireplaces. Spits squeak under the weight of whole animals, spinning ceaselessly, dripping onto the embers below. And in the darkness, boys as young as 10, such spit boys, turn the knobs, hour after hour, red-faced, numb-handed. One forgot to blink. Another swayed slightly. No one stopped. The master chef growled something half command, half scolding. No one responded. They just moved faster. The sauce was spoiled. A bird was undercooked. The boar was late. There was no time. The high table wouldn't wait. You wouldn't last 5 minutes here. There had been a butcher, a pastry chef, a sauce chef, and even a sugar chef. He was now molding boiled honey into a lion, his 3rd attempt. The first melted. The second looked more like a dog. He hoped he wouldn't be laughed at this time. Another man was lighting a swan on fire. Not cooking it, no. That had been done hours ago. It was just the finishing touch, a show of fire and time. The feathers had been plucked, painted, and reattached. It must be perfectly golden, firm in stance, its beak painted with a hint of edible black. In the corner, someone is stuffing a cake, not with fruit or meat, with live birds. You're not sure how they manage. You're not sure you want to know. The ingredients in this room cost more than most villages earn in a season. Saffron is kept as a treasure. Cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg are weighed out in trembling hands. Sugar is locked in a box. One wrong move, one bad dish, and someone is demoted. Maybe to the stables, maybe worse. Someone has forgotten the difference between mustard and saffron. The cook's face stiffens. He takes a breath. Then he smiles too brightly and orders the offender to wash all the utensils for the next dish, by hand, with sand and ash. Because there's no soap, not here. A boy cut his thumb while chopping parsley. He didn't stop. He wrapped it in a cloth and continued chopping. The blood on the cutting board disappeared under the next pile of herbs. Hot, noisy, dangerous. And it worked. Somehow. Despite the chaos, the kitchen moved like a living thing, limbs in motion, with a single purpose. Trays were arranged, plates were wiped clean, steam rose from pots of boiling water, dough was rolled, shaped, filled. Roasted birds were flavored with oranges, apples, or whatever fruit had survived the journey from the cellar. Jelly was removed from the molds, custards were dusted, someone added candied violets to the cake just before the manager burst through the door. "Lock sixes, now!" The room lurched. There was no shouting, just movement. Swift, expert, trays were lifted, balanced, carried through the revolving doors with all the reverence of religious icons. And then, as the last servant disappeared, silence. Just for a moment. Because then comes the cleaning. Bones, bread crusts, burnt bits, buckets pulled up, trenchers scraped clean. The cycle resets. In between, the master chef exhales. His face is beaded with sweat. His apron is a battlefield of stains, but his eyes sweep the room like a general. He counts each plate. He counts each head. Then he mutters, "Starting the peacock tomorrow." Because there is always another feast, another lord, another test, another set of eyes waiting to be seen and enjoyed. Historians still argue about the organization of these kitchens. Some say it was almost military discipline. Others say it was more like orchestrated chaos, barely kept together by fame and fortune. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between, supported by the threat of humiliation and the promise of advancement. No one eats without a stove, but no one thanks the stove either. You sitting at the back of the hall, see only the presence of people, the steam rising, the decorations, the shiny silverware. You don't see the panic, the burns, the boys with blistered hands. You see only the result: a warm custard, a fort-shaped pie, a wild boar stuffed with pears and rosemary. You nod approvingly. You take a bite. It tastes like success or survival. Sometimes both are the same. The feast ended not with a bang, but with a belch. The sound was subtle, solemn, hopeful, masked by a cough. But it signaled the truth: no one at this table was eating because they were still hungry. They were eating because the food was still there, because they were being watched, because to refuse would be to make a statement, and no one wanted to make a statement at this hour. So, quietly, one by one, the guests began to move. Some leaned back, some dabbed their lips with linen cloths, a few whispered to their neighbors, subtle signals of departure. You felt it too, the fullness, the warmth, a slight pressure behind the eyes that said, perhaps it was time. But of course, the departure was not simple. There was no sorry and no passing. You were part of the flow now, and the flow was slow. Etiquette requires patience. You wait for the host to give you the signal, or at least until someone of higher status makes the first move. So you sit down, you wait. You pretend to enjoy the final course: sugared almonds rolled in rosewater and something that tastes strangely like soap. Finally, the host stands. Everyone follows. The couch creaks softly. Fabrics rustle. The smell of cloves and bacon clings to everything. Someone tries to stifle a sob. You make your way out of the hall. In a loose, unruly, unmilitary fashion. The large door opens, and suddenly you're in the hallway. The air is cooler here. If only a little. You inhale. You regret it. Because now your body is reminding you of something urgent, something practical. You need to go to the bathroom. Really? And you are not alone. Perhaps the most common post-medieval banquet dilemma: where exactly do you go? Not if, but where. If you're lucky, very lucky, you'll be near a lavatory, a small stone room built into the outer wall, with a hole in the bench and a dangerous chasm below. No privacy, no lock, no guarantee you won't see or be seen. You glance around the hallway. Two nobles have disappeared down a side passage. A servant is leading guests up the stairs. You follow, hoping you don't faint from the pressure before you get there. The room is small, cold, lit only by a small candle. The hole stares at you like the mouth of a judging demon. You straighten your cloak. You try not to look down, but you do. You regret it. Because what's down there? That depends. Some castles had chutes that dumped waste directly into the moat. Others channeled it into latrines open, muddy, frothing, stinking pools that stretched for miles. Historians still argue about which system was worse. Moats might carry it away, but they also carry it everywhere. Latrines hold it, but only until it overflows or someone falls in. Both happened. And of course, there were no washing stations. Water was precious. Soap was scarce. You wiped your hands on straw, on a rag, on your robe, On the curtains, if you were brave enough, you pretended not to notice the dried stains on the wall next to you. And then you turned around, but something had changed. The room was quieter now. The torches had dimmed. Some of the guests had left altogether. Others have moved into smaller rooms, where wine flows more privately and alliances are formed in whispers. You are free to leave, but the night still smolders. You can stay, linger, see who will say what when the bigwigs are gone. Or you can sleep. Your room awaits, somewhere up a narrow staircase and behind a heavy wooden door. If you are lucky, there is a fire burning. If not, the stone is cold enough to hurt. Your mattress straw, your blanket rough wool, your pillow probably shared with mice. But right now, it sounds like heaven. So you retreat, withdrawing from the warmth of companionship and settling into the silence of the stone. Your boots echo, your shadow stretches in the torchlight, you pass a window, and for a moment, you see the stars, clear, cold, whole. It's quiet until it's not. From below, someone shouts, laughter. A door slams, footsteps hurry. You stop, wait, listen, then continue. You reach your room. It smells faintly of herbs and ashes. You take off your outer clothes, hang them near the fireplace, although there's no fire. You lie down on the bed. It creaks like an old man's knees. You close your eyes. But sleep doesn't come easily. For outside, in the late night air, the sound of sewage flows from stone canals. In the yard, pigs rummage for discarded bones. Somewhere near the stables, a servant is retching behind a barrel. And down the hall, someone is still singing the song about the fox and the king. You sigh. The feast is over, but the consequences have only just begun. You wake before dawn, like most of the castle, cold, stiff, and a little confused. The stone floor seems even harder now. Your tongue feels stuffed with wool, and your head is vibrating to a faint drumbeat that you're pretty sure isn't coming from the party musicians. You swing your legs over the edge of the straw mattress and stretch until your joints crackle. The fire never comes. None of the servants have lit it, or maybe they've forgotten, or maybe they're still napping under the table somewhere. Doesn't matter now. You shuffle to the window. Outside, the world is a fog. Grays roll over the grass like tides, swallowing the stables and creeping along the walls. Somewhere, a rooster crows with overconfidence. You don't feel royal. You feel like a piece of meat left too long near the hearth. Still, you have to work. The servants have begun to whisper on the lower floors. Footsteps echo, water splashes. Somewhere, a bell rings softly, not for you, but for someone more important. The castle is moving. You splash cold water from the basin over your face, so cold it almost wakes you from your sleep. Almost. Then there are the clothes. Of course, you don't dress yourself. Those are for children and peasants. No. You have a system. Layers of linen, wool, fur, unreachable buttons, untied ties, all designed to show your importance to anyone who cares, which is everyone. A servant enters. She is silent. She has seen it all. She ties your sleeves, adjusts your collar, brushes the lint from your shoulders. Her hands move with practiced speed. You mumble thanks. She nodded once and disappeared. And just like that, you become a human being again. On the surface, at least. Breakfast is a rather vague concept in the castle. Some mornings it is a feast: eggs, cold meats, thick beer. Other mornings it is just a piece of bread and a prayer for strength. Today it is raw-smelling cheese and a pot of something bitter brown. You pretend to enjoy it. You nod politely. You long for oranges. But oranges don't exist here, unless a merchant has brought them from the south. And if they did, they are gone sliced, sugared, and eaten by someone more powerful than you. Still, the meal does its job keeping you upright. And standing upright is necessary. Because today you are going riding. Not for sport, not for war, for trade. You follow the butler through the main hall, which has lost its splendor. The plates are gone. The banners hang loosely. The air smells of grease and something less than polite. A few guests linger, red-eyed and hunched, whispering what sounds like strategy. Outside, the horses wait. They stamp and snort in the cold, their breath like dragon smoke. Your horse is strong, but unimpressive. You pat its neck, it ignores you. Normal. You climb into the saddle. Ahead, a train of wagons. Small but well-equipped, bales of cloth, casks of salted fish, a crate full of glass beads that glint in the sun if there is any sun at all. The road awaits, and it is unpaved. It is mud and gravel and regret, but it leads somewhere important. To market towns, to ports, to cities filled with things you've only heard described in exaggerated detail. And more. Silk, spices, secrets. Historians often debate how often the nobility actually traveled. Some say most stayed within the confines of their estates. Others claim that trade turned everyone, even the most privileged, into vagabonds. The truth probably lies somewhere in the dust your hooves kick up. Because you're on the move, you're part of the system now. The road is long. The trees whisper things you can't quite understand. The wind shifts unexpectedly, but the caravan moves steadily. At midday, you stop by a stream. Bread is shared. Water is scooped up with a helmet. A reed piper startles the horses. Someone else tells a joke that would have been funny in another century. You laugh anyway, because laughter helps you forget the real danger of the jungle. Bandits, wolves, both hungry, both smart. That night, you fall asleep, curled up next to the wagon. The stars above are unfamiliar, just dots on a sea of black. The fire crackles. Someone snores. Another sharpens his knife, slowly and steadily. But the road still beckons. Because this is how the party goes on long after the plates are cleared, long after the chamber pot is emptied, long after the silk napkin is put away. It goes on in every wagon, every saddlebag, every sales pitch in a dark alley near a foreign market. You roll over, eyes half closed. Tomorrow, the journey will be deeper. By the second day, your legs feel like they belong to someone else, someone you once insulted. Perhaps the road is no longer smooth. It jolts, it sways, it laughs at your attempts to keep your posture in the saddle. Your horse has a twitch in its left ear, and you now take it personally. Yet the convoy keeps moving. The landscape stretches out in a steady gray and gray. Clumps of trees, low hills, the occasional farmhouse that looks more suspicious than welcoming. You nod at passing farmers. They don't nod back. A boy throws a turnip. You're not sure if it's a gift or an insult. You don't stop to ask. In the back carriage, someone sneezes into a pile of dyed cloth. A merchant curses softly. The cloth was made for a lady of modest means and a keen sense of smell. Now it smells of onions and regret. By midday, the road forks. The left road leads to the nearest trading town. Stone walls, gates, clear taxes. The right road leads into the woods, to merchants who value secrecy over receipts. You choose the woods, because you've heard the rumors. Silk? Not rags. Not the kind sewn onto the sleeves of nobles to impress distant relatives. Real silk, roll upon roll, smooth as water, the color of sunset, woven somewhere to the logical east and the western edge of the map. Silk that travels thousands of miles inside the bellies of camels, across icy mountain passes, through deserts where stars fall sideways. The Silk Road. Of course, you're not on the real Silk Road. Not yet. You're only on a thread of it, a quarrel, a whisper. But even here, the road echoes. You follow it through moss-covered trees, past a shrine to a forgotten saint with a broken nose, past a one-eyed man who sells almonds and won't tell you where he gets them, past a camp where gold-toothed women offer you tea and unwanted prophecies. You listen anyway, because every prophecy begins with a warning. As night falls, you come to a clearing. A tent stands there, low and wide, sewn from a dozen different fabrics. It smells of cinnamon, sweat, and something even stranger, cloves, cardamom, camel. A woman steps out. She wears earrings heavy enough to be weapons and a gaze sharp enough to cut cloth. She doesn't ask who you are. She already knows. She's heard you're looking for silk. She smiles. Not cruelly, not kindly. Just amused. Then she motions you inside. Inside, it's warmer than you'd expect. A small fire, cloud carpets, a man playing something strung on strings in the corner. You sit down. You wait. She unrolls a coil of string. It sparkles. Not gold, not silver, not even a color. Exactly. It moves like liquid and catches fire as if it has an opinion. You try not to gasp. You fail. She names a price. You try to haggle. She smiles. She names another, higher. You make your first bid. She nods. The cloth is rolled up, tied with a thread that you suspect is more valuable than your shoes. You leave the tent with fewer coins, but more secrets. Because the cloth, it's not just silk. That's the story. That's the evidence. That's the power, woven thinly and tinged with mystery. Historians still debate whether silk came to Europe in these ways through forests, overland, passed from caravan to caravan by word of mouth, or whether it was always shipped in bales on ships with neat paperwork and boring taxes. But anyone who has ever seen a man risk his life to fight wolves for a piece of cloth knows the truth lies somewhere in between. The path out is darker now. You walk by flashlight. The woods don't like to be seen at night. The branches lean too close. The owl follows in silence. Once, you hear laughter. You don't look back. Finally, the trees thin out. The road widens. Ahead, a town. Not big, not grand, but bustling. You've made it. And so is the silk. Tomorrow, you'll give it to a merchant who sells illusions and perfumes. He'll smell it, caress it, maybe drape it over his shoulder. Then he'll pay you half its value. You'll take it anyway, because silk always comes back. It slips from the shoulders of nobles to the hands of merchants to the needles of tailors and back again. It outlasts wars. It outlasts kings. You walk into the inn, silk in hand, muddy boots, bent back, sore eyes. The boy at the counter asks your name. You lie. He doesn't care. He hands you a key. Upstairs, a bed awaits. It is bumpy. It smells of garlic. You fall into it as gently as a fallen ham. Silk sleeps beside you. And outside, the wind rustles the leaves like silk rustling secrets. Morning comes to a town that never sleeps. You hear it before you see it, the creaking of carts, the rustling of cloth, the soft haggling like a river running through muddy streets. Your body protests as you sit up, every joint stiff, your neck twisted from sharing a pillow with a heavy roll of silk. Still, you stand. You splash water on your face. It doesn't help much. The smell of garlic is still there, seeping into your tunic, like a ghost that refuses to leave. The innkeeper hands you bread and what looks like broth. You thank him out of habit, not pleasure. You take the parcel and step into the market square, where colors mingle with sounds. Spices in open sacks, dyes staining your fingers, children playing with chickens, men selling silver pins like dragon teeth. Somewhere, a monkey plays a tambourine while its owner pretends not to pickpocket. You have reached the heart of the street where stories, lies, and silks all change hands. Your contact is waiting. He is older than you think, draped in soft wool and a hint of smugness. His beard is dyed, his eyes constantly scanning you. He does not greet you. He weighs the package in his hands, unties the string, and pulls the cloth apart with the reverence of a priest unwrapping a relic. He does not smile. That would be too honest. But he nods once, and that is enough. You do not barter. Not here. Not with him. Instead, he points to a box under his counter. Coins. Not much, not enough, but the best you can get. He waits for you to object. You do not. Because you know what happens next. He wraps the silk again. Different fabric, new string, maybe a little perfume. Then he turns to a woman standing nearby, and without blinking, he doubles the price. She pays. You watch her walk away with her silk, laughing. Her hair is braided in gold. Her maid carries 3 more packages. She disappears down the alley as if she owns the wind. That's the business. That's the game. You buy stories. You sell dreams. You lose money. You gain fame. The vendor offers you something else, a bag of powdered lapis lazuli, smuggled through 3 customs checkpoints. You shake your head. Not today. Instead, you stroll through the market. You pass a stall selling Persian glassware. Another offers you dates so sweet they make your teeth ache just looking at them. A man offers you a taste of a sauce made from fermented fish. You decline, politely. He seems relieved. You see a man with a falcon, not a pet, a companion. The bird stares at you with coin-like eyes. The man nods. You nod back. A silent language. You remember hearing that falcons are worth more than horses in some places. that princes trade spices and silver for feathers, that in some courts the falcon's perch is closer to the throne than the minister's chair. Historians still debate whether these birds were status symbols or survival tools. Perhaps both. Perhaps the line between symbol and survival is thinner than we like to admit. You find a quiet corner and sit down. Your legs shake, your shoulders slump, your wallet is lighter, but your head is heavy, with images, sounds, regrets, small victories. You've come this far. The town is noisy, yes, but safe for now. Later, you'll return to the castle, or to another castle, or to a road that leads somewhere new. But for now, you rest. You lean against a warm rock in the sun and watch people pass like water down a muddy stream. A juggler throws knives. A child tugs at his mother's sleeve, begging for honeyed chestnuts. A thief runs away with an apple, grinning. No one stops him. The wind carries the scent of fennel, manure, sweat, and a hint of orange. You close your eyes. And for the first time in days, you don't feel like you're chasing anything. You just exist between the party and the streets, between the silk and the stone, between then and whatever comes next. The town begins to quiet as the light fades. Not completely quiet, more like a gentler rhythm. The noise of the market subsides, seeping into the cracks in the stone walls. Merchants cover their wares, horses stomp aimlessly. The air becomes heavy with the scent of oil lamps and fading spices. You sit there for a long time, leaning against the warm stone, watching the people pass by. No one is in a hurry anymore. It's as if the whole town has taken a deep breath and decided not to exhale too quickly. The party is far behind you now. The road, for the first time, is no longer beneath your feet. You stand still. And it feels strange. Your hands are empty. No silk, no coins pressed into your palms. Just the dust on your sleeves and the faint scent of cardamom in your robes. You can leave now. There's nothing holding you back, but you don't, not yet. A figure passes, a juggler, moving silently between stalls, balancing 3 onions as if they were made of glass. Children giggle and follow, weaving between baskets and crates. Somewhere to your right, someone is playing a flute light, faint notes, floating like feathers. You wander. Your feet hurt less now. You pass a bread stand, still warm from the evening fire. The woman there offers you her last piece of bread, flat and whole, wrapped in an old cloth. You thank her. She shrugs as if it were nothing, as if sharing were just another form of exchange. You continue walking. The sun has set behind the roofs, and the town is cloaked in a hazy cloak. Lanterns come on one by one, casting pools of gold across the cobblestone streets. You find yourself in a square you've never noticed before. It's smaller, quieter. A group of people are gathered near a barrel. In front of you, a man climbs on top of the barrel. He's tall, or maybe just thin enough to look tall. His cloak is patched in mismatched patches, and his beard curls like ivy around his chin. He doesn't speak right away. He waits until the square listens. Then he begins to tell a story. His story isn't about kings or knights. It's about a shoemaker who falls in love with a star. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to. The crowd draws closer. You listen, drawn in not by the plot but by the rhythm, the way he pauses, the way he sighs just before a turn, the way his hands trace the air as if it were a painting. A girl next to you whispers the next sentence before he speaks. She had heard that before, many times, perhaps, but she smiled as if it were the first time. When he finished, there was no applause, just silence, the kind that lingered. You dropped a coin into the small leather pouch at his feet. He didn't thank you. He just looked at you and nodded a greeting between 2 different travelers. You walked back into the street, and then it was there again, a pull. A gentle tug at the back of your ribs, the one that said, go, not because you had to, but because staying meant it was over, and nothing ever really ended, not if you kept walking. You left the town through the eastern gate. No one stopped you. No guard called out. You passed under the arch like a whisper. The sky opens above you, vast, black, dotted with unhurried stars. The road ahead is only a hint. Faint carriage tracks, scattered stones, a darker line through darker grass. But it is enough. You walk. Not fast, not bravely. Just forward. Behind you, The town narrows. A lantern here, a torch there. Soon, only one light remains on the horizon, another memory woven into your cloak. Somewhere ahead, there will be another town, another feast, another fire by the roadside. Historians still debate whether these wanderers mattered, whether their footsteps built empires or simply wore away stone. Some say they are ambassadors of commerce. Others call them cultural thieves, but you know the truth lies somewhere in the silence. In the space between the stalls and the market. In the silence after the storyteller stops. In the feel of your shoes on a path you don't know. You breathe in the cold. It smells of dust and promise. And then you laugh. Not loudly, just enough for the wind to carry it away. Because wherever the next path turns, you've already begun. Now let your breathing calm down. Relax your shoulders, relax your jaw. The streets are quiet. The night has fallen. And there is nothing left to chase. No parties, no markets, no names to remember. Just the silence of distant stars and the warmth of silence. Imagine the last lantern flickering in the town behind you, and the cool air wrapping you like a soft cloak. You are safe here. You are home now. Flow slowly, gently. There's nothing left to do. Just to rest. Just to breathe. Just to sleep.